At 58 years old, Noel Gallagher has finally said the words that Oasis fans have feared for years. He's done with his brother Liam. And this time, it's not about music, it's personal. From smashed guitars to family betrayals, the story behind their falling out is bigger, nastier, and more heartbreaking than most people realize. But what exactly pushed Noel to finally slam the door shut for good, though? Join us as we break down the full story behind the fight that destroyed Oasis forever. The early bond. Before they were rock stars, before the sold-out stadiums, before the insults and fights, Noel and Liam Gallagher were just two lads growing up in Burnage, a working-class area of Manchester. Their story starts in a small, cramped council house, surrounded by the grey streets of northern England. The Gallagher household was far from peaceful. Their father, Tommy Gallagher, was known to be violent, especially toward their mother, Peggy. It was a tough place to grow up, and it shaped both brothers in different ways. Noel, born in 1967, was the middle child. Liam, born 5 years later in 1972, was the youngest. They also had an older brother, Paul. From early on, it was clear that Noel and Liam were very different. Noel was quiet and thoughtful, and spent a lot of time alone, mostly listening to music in his room or teaching himself guitar. Liam, on the other hand, was loud, cocky, and always getting into trouble at school or on the streets. While Noel kept his head down, trying to escape into his headphones and dreams of songwriting, Liam was out getting into fights. The brothers didn't exactly get along growing up. Noel often said that Liam was annoying, while Liam would call Noel boring. There was already a tension there, but underneath all the arguing, they were still brothers. And for better or worse, they were stuck with each other. The real turning point came when Peggy finally decided to leave their violent father. She packed up the kids and moved them to another house in Burnage, away from Tommy. This move brought a bit of peace to their lives, but by then, both boys had already developed hard edges. They had learned to fight not just with the outside world, but with each other. Music was always in the background of their early life. Bands like the Beatles, the Smiths, and the Stone Roses were filling the Manchester airwaves, and both brothers were soaking it in. Noel, especially, fell in love with guitar music. He would sit for hours learning how to play chords and write songs, dreaming of one day escaping the grey streets of Burnage for something bigger. Meanwhile, Liam wasn't as interested in music yet, at least not until he saw how being in a band could change your life. By the early 90s, Liam had started hanging around with a local band called The Rain. They were just another group of young guys hoping to make it big, but they didn't have much direction. Liam joined as their singer, bringing with him a cocky swagger and the kind of wild energy that would later make him famous. But they were still missing something. That something was Noel. Noel had spent years working as a roadie for the Manchester band in Spiral Carpets. Being around professional musicians gave him ideas. More importantly, it showed him how bands operated and how important good songwriting was. When he came back home, he saw Liam's band and thought they were a joke. But Liam begged him to come along, and eventually, Noel agreed to join on one condition. He would be in complete control of the music. Noel wasn't interested in being part of some average Manchester band. He had big plans. He had already written songs like Live Forever and Slide Away, anthems waiting for a stage. With Noel writing and Liam singing, the pieces suddenly fell into place. The Rain changed their name to Oasis, and Manchester would never be the same again. Their early dynamic was clear right from the start. Noel wrote the songs, ran the rehearsals, and made the decisions. Liam was the front man, the wild one with the voice and the attitude. He was the front. I was the brains, Noel once said. And it was true. On stage, Liam had that dangerous, unpredictable energy that made people stare. Off stage, Noel kept the ship steady with his songwriting and sharp mind for the business. The chemistry between them was electric. Liam's voice, full of snarl and confidence, brought life to Noel's words. Together, they created a sound that was raw, loud, and impossible to ignore. The first album, Definitely Maybe, exploded onto the scene in 1994. Songs like Rock and Roll Star and Cigarettes and Alcohol were not just music, they were statements of intent. These songs screamed that Oasis was going to be the biggest band in the world. Then came What's the Story in 1995, and with it, true global fame. Wonderwall, Don't Look Back in Anger, and Champagne Supernova made them superstars. Noel's songwriting captured the dreams of working-class kids across Britain, and Liam's voice made those dreams sound possible. Oasis's golden years and the cracks emerging. Oasis didn't just become famous, they exploded. By the mid-1990s, they were one of the biggest bands in the world. Every song they released seemed to become an anthem. Every show they played sold out. It felt like nothing could stop them. But behind the music, something else was building. Fame didn't fix Noel and Liam's problems as brothers. It made them worse. As the crowds got bigger and the headlines louder, so did the fights. At first, it was just the usual arguments that you'd expect between two brothers. They would shout, swear, and sometimes throw punches. But success amplified everything. Noel was the one writing all the hits. Liam was the one standing at the front getting all the attention. It was like having two kings in the same castle. Neither of them wanted to be second best, and neither of them knew how to back down. The first signs of serious trouble came with their early gigs. One of the most famous stories is about their set at Glastonbury Festival in 1995. Oasis was at the top of their game, but before going on stage, the brothers had been fighting backstage. Liam had been drinking heavily. Just before their performance, Liam started insulting Noel's lyrics and even messed with the songs during the show, changing words to wind his brother up. Noel later said that he was embarrassed by how unprofessional it looked. It wasn't just brotherly teasing anymore, it was sabotage. Then there was the MTV Unplugged incident in 1996. MTV Unplugged was a big deal at the time. Every band wanted to show that they could perform live without the noise and effects of a full rock show. Oasis was booked for it, and everyone expected something special. But when it came time for the performance, Liam said he had a sore throat and refused to sing. He sat upstairs drinking champagne while Noel sang lead vocals in front of a worldwide audience. It was awkward, tense, and hard to watch. Afterward, Liam heckled Noel from the balcony, shouting insults while his brother tried to perform. That moment showed the world that things inside Oasis weren't right. As the money and fame kept pouring in, so did the drugs and alcohol. By the time they recorded their third album, Be Here Now, in 1997, the band was drowning in excess. Cocaine was everywhere. Parties would go on for days. Even the recording sessions were chaotic. Everyone was high, and nobody was thinking straight. The songs on that album were loud, long, and over the top. Noel later admitted that they didn't really know what they were doing at the time. They were too deep into the rock star lifestyle to care. Liam's behavior became even more unpredictable. He would miss studio sessions, turn up drunk to interviews, and constantly insult his bandmates. People around Oasis saw what was happening. The crew, the managers, even the other band members, they all knew that the Gallagher brothers' relationship was toxic. Guitarist Bonehead once said in an interview that being in Oasis was like being stuck between two parents who hated each other but refused to split up. The fights weren't always physical, but the tension was everywhere. Sound checks would turn into shouting matches. Recording sessions would break down because of arguments about small details, like the volume of Liam's vocals or the arrangement of a song. It wasn't just the people around them who saw the damage. Noel himself started realizing that he couldn't handle it much longer. By the late 90s, he had already walked out of the band more than once. After a particularly bad fight, he left in the middle of an American tour. When asked why, he gave one of his most famous quotes, "If I stay, I'll kill him." It wasn't a joke. The anger was that deep. Despite all this, they kept going. Why? Because Oasis was making millions. They were at the top of the world, and both brothers knew that. No matter how much they hated each other behind closed doors, they were addicted to the success. The shows kept selling out, the records kept going to #1, and the public couldn't get enough of the drama. But everyone close to them could see it was only a matter of time before something gave way. The brothers' relationship was no longer just difficult, it was dangerous. And the more famous they got, the more destructive their fights became. By the end of the Be Here Now era, it was clear that Oasis was no longer just a band. It was a battlefield. And at the center of that battlefield were two brothers who could barely stand to be in the same room, let alone work together. And that's exactly where it was all heading, to one explosive moment when it all finally came crashing down. The 2009 Paris incident. By 2009, Oasis was already holding itself together with tape. For years, the band had been battling through the fights, the drug problems, and the personal insults. Everyone knew Noel and Liam hated each other, but they also knew how much money was on the line. Fans kept coming to the shows. The record still sold You Difficult. Gallagher brothers were like two boxers who refused to quit, swinging at each other while the whole world watched. But on August 28, 2009, everything finally came apart. The place was Paris, France. Oasis was scheduled to headline the Rock on Seine festival, a huge event with tens of thousands of fans waiting. It was supposed to be another big night for the band. Instead, it became the last. The fight started backstage, just minutes before Oasis was supposed to walk out and perform. The argument began, as usual, with words. By this point, both brothers were tired of each other, and even small comments could start an argument. That night, it wasn't just words. It quickly got physical. According to people who were there, Liam stormed into the dressing room, holding one of Noel's guitars, and started swinging it like a weapon. Guitars were smashed. Security and crew members tried to separate them, but the damage was done. There were rumors that fists were thrown, although Noel never confirmed exactly what happened. What is certain is that Noel finally had enough. In his own words, he said, "I simply could not go on working with Liam a day longer." Noel walked out that night, not just from the gig, but from the entire band. The crowd outside didn't know what was happening. One minute, people were singing and chanting, waiting for Oasis to appear. The next minute, an announcement came over the speakers. Oasis will not be performing tonight. The band has split up. It was sudden, it was brutal, and it felt like a shockwave. Fans stood in silence. Some thought it was a joke. Others started booing. But it was real. After years of rumors, the band had finally broken up for good. Not in some planned statement, but in the middle of a European tour, minutes before a major show. The next day, Noel released an official statement. It was short but clear. He said, "It's with some sadness and great relief to tell you that I quit Oasis tonight. People will write and say what they like, but I simply could not go on working with Liam a day longer." That one sentence said it all. Sadness, because of everything they had built. Relief, because he was finally free from the constant fighting. And certainly, because this wasn't a temporary walkout like before, this was the real ending. The media went into a frenzy. For years, headlines had followed the Gallagher brothers' every move. Newspapers, music magazines, and websites all over the world reported on the split. Oasis split was splashed across the front pages in Britain. Music journalists started writing about the band's legacy, wondering if they would ever get back together. Some people said it was typical Gallagher behavior, dramatic, loud, and messy. Others felt sad that one of the biggest British bands of the 1990s had fallen apart in such an ugly way. Fans were heartbroken. Oasis meant more than just music to many people. For a generation growing up in Britain during the 1990s, Oasis had been the soundtrack to their lives. Songs like Don't Look Back in Anger and Wonderwall were played at weddings, in pubs, at football matches, everywhere. Seeing the band fall apart like that, especially because of two brothers who couldn't get along, felt personal to a lot of people. Liam didn't take long to respond. Just days later, he told reporters that Noel was a control freak and that the band didn't need him. He tried to play it cool, acting like Oasis could continue without his brother. But deep down, both brothers knew that Oasis wasn't Oasis without both Gallaghers. Noel had written the songs. Liam had sung them. It didn't work without that combination. Noel, for his part, was done. He didn't want any reunion talks. He didn't want to patch things up. For him, it wasn't just about the band anymore. It was personal. He felt that Liam had crossed too many lines, said too many things that couldn't be taken back. And now, the band was over, and the two brothers were strangers. The final word was simple, brutal, and to the point. We're done. Forever. The breakup wasn't the end of their war. It was just the start of something even messier. Public insults and personal betrayals. When Oasis finally broke up in 2009 after the fight in Paris, it felt like the end of an era. But for Noel and Liam Gallagher, it wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of a whole new war. What had started as arguments between two brothers soon became a public feud that got more personal, more bitter, and harder to watch as the years went by. Right after Oasis ended, both brothers went their separate ways musically. Noel took his time before launching his solo career. In 2011, he released his first album with Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds. It was a success. Critics loved it, and fans supported him. The songs were different from Oasis, less loud, more thoughtful, but they still carried that classic Gallagher style of sharp lyrics and catchy melodies. Noel was focused, sharp, and in control, finally free from the chaos of being in a band with his brother. Liam, on the other hand, wasn't going to sit around quietly. Almost immediately after Oasis split, he formed a new band called Beady Eye. The band included former Oasis members Jem Archer, Andy Bell, and Chris Sharrock. They released their first album, Different Gear, Still Speeding, in 2011. While it did okay, it never came close to matching the success of Oasis. Beady Eye didn't have the same magic, and it was clear to many that what people really wanted was the Gallagher brothers back together. But instead of reunion talks, things got worse between them. The feud between Noel and Liam went nuclear, moving from backstage fights to a full-on war fought in interviews, on TV, and especially online. Liam found a new weapon: Twitter. He used it like a hammer, constantly posting insults aimed at Noel. He mocked Noel's appearance, his music, and even his personal life. One of the most famous insults was when Liam started calling Noel a potato, a nickname that caught on with fans and turned into memes across social media. Photos of Noel's head edited onto potatoes were everywhere. Liam loved it. Every interview he gave seemed to have some new dig at his brother. If Noel released a new song, Liam would mock it online, calling it boring or embarrassing. But it wasn't just about music anymore. Things started to get personal, and that's when the whole feud turned nasty. Liam began bringing up Noel's family in public. He insulted Noel's wife, Sarah McDonald, calling her names and blaming her for keeping the brothers apart. At one point, Liam posted a tweet about Noel's daughter, Anais, which crossed a major line. Noel, who had often joked about his brother's behavior before, now became visibly angry about it. In interviews, Noel admitted that the jokes weren't funny anymore. "It's not banter anymore," he said. "It's just abuse now. I don't even know why he's doing it." You could hear the shift in his tone. It wasn't just about an argument between two musicians anymore. It was personal betrayal and family betrayal, and it stung deeply. Both brothers also tried to control the story of Oasis through media projects. In 2016, a documentary called Supersonic was released, telling the story of Oasis's rise to fame. The film focused mainly on the early years, showing the wild success of their first albums and the famous gigs at Nebworth. It carefully avoided most of the ugly breakup details. Interestingly, both Noel and Liam were involved in the making of it, providing separate interviews. But even in the film's promotion, the brothers were attacking each other in the press. Each one seemed desperate to make sure fans sided with their version of the story. For a moment, it looked like things might improve between them. After the terrible Manchester Arena bombing in 2017, Liam appeared at the One Love Manchester charity concert organized by Ariana Grande. Liam sang Oasis songs during the concert and called on Noel to join him, saying it would mean a lot to the people of Manchester. Some fans thought this might be the olive branch they'd been hoping for. Maybe the tragedy would finally bring the brothers back together. But that hope didn't last long. Liam went online afterward, accusing Noel of refusing to show up because of personal grudges. Noel stayed mostly quiet, but sources close to him said he hadn't even been invited. Soon after, the insults were flying again. Whatever moment of peace there could have been between them was gone, lost in the same storm of anger and old wounds. What made it worse for fans was that both brothers kept teasing the idea of a reunion in their own twisted way. Liam would say things like, "I'm ready. All Noel has to do is pick up the phone." Meanwhile, Noel would roll his eyes in interviews, saying that Liam was full of it and just wanted attention. For Noel, it was clear the relationship was broken far beyond Oasis. He once said, "I don't even think of him as family anymore." Despite all of this, Liam's solo career finally took off in the late 2010 IS. His debut solo album, As You Were, went to #1, powered by his charm, his voice, and his ability to turn himself into a kind of rock and roll underdog. Fans kept chanting for Oasis at his shows, and he happily fed into it. Even though he knew a reunion wasn't coming, he kept the idea alive because it gave people hope and kept him in the headlines. Noel, on the other hand, kept going in the opposite direction. His music became more experimental, his interviews more blunt, and his attitude more closed off. He didn't care what anyone thought anymore, least of all his brother. It was clear by this point the Gallagher brothers weren't just having a band breakup, they were having a family breakup. The bond that held them together had completely snapped. The music wasn't enough to fix it. The fame wasn't enough to fix it. Not even tragedy could fix it. Why Noel says it's over for good 5. For years after Oasis broke up, people believed that eventually Noel and Liam Gallagher would find a way back to each other. Every time either of them released new music or gave an interview, the reunion questions kept coming. Even when the insults got personal and cruel, fans kept holding on to the idea that maybe one day the two brothers would stand on stage together again. But now, at 58, Noel Gallagher has made it clear. It's over for good. In recent interviews, you can hear something different in Noel's voice. It's not just frustration or boredom anymore, it's something heavier. There's a sense of exhaustion, not just with the idea of Oasis, but with Liam himself. Noel isn't just tired of the fighting, he feels betrayed on a deeper level, like the damage has gone too far to ever be repaired. Noel has said in interviews that he's spent the last decade reflecting on everything that happened. Looking back on Oasis, he doesn't hide how proud he is of the music they made. Those songs meant everything to millions of people, and he knows that. But the more he talks about Liam now, the more you hear regret, not just about the band ending, but about how his relationship with his own brother completely fell apart. What makes this time feel so final is that it's not about music anymore. Noel's decision isn't about Oasis getting back together or not. It's about family. Noel feels that Liam crossed a line that can't be fixed, and that's what has changed the whole story. The biggest reason Noel gives for being done with Liam forever is how personal the feud became over the years. It's not just rock star drama anymore. Noel claims that Liam deliberately dragged their private family life into the public eye to try and embarrass him. In particular, he's talked about how Liam targeted Noel's wife, Sarah McDonald, during interviews and on social media. Liam's comments about Sarah were often crude, insulting, and, according to Noel, completely out of line. But it didn't stop there. The real breaking point came when Noel said that Liam dragged their children into the feud. There was one moment in particular that hit Noel hard. Liam had posted cryptic tweets that seemed to involve Noel's daughter, Anais, creating tension and stress for the whole family. For Noel, that crossed a boundary that you don't come back from. It wasn't just two brothers arguing anymore. It was one brother trying to tear the other down by using his family against him. That's the kind of betrayal that Noel says he can't forgive. In one of the interviews that made headlines, Noel summed up his feelings with a brutal line that shocked even longtime fans. He said, "It's not about Oasis. It's about him as a person. I don't recognize him anymore." That quote hit hard because it showed that this wasn't just about a broken band. It was about a broken relationship between two people who used to be family. Noel has said many times that he's not angry about Oasis ending. He's proud of what they did. He's still grateful for the fans. He even plays some Oasis songs during his solo shows because he knows how much those songs mean to people. But when it comes to Liam, the door is completely shut. Noel has explained that it's not a business decision or a publicity stunt. It's personal. "I don't want to be around him, I don't want to speak to him, and I don't want to pretend that we're friends," he said in another recent interview. Even interviewers who used to push for reunion questions have stopped asking. Over the past couple of years, you can see that the tone has shifted. Journalists now talk about Noel's solo music, his personal growth, and his life away from the chaos of the Oasis years. It's not fun for him to talk about Liam anymore. It's uncomfortable and painful, and often ends with Noel shutting the conversation down with a sharp comment or a tired sigh. Another moment that stood out was Noel's interview with BBC Radio in 2023. When asked if a reconciliation was possible, Noel didn't hesitate. "Impossible," he said firmly. "Not after everything that's been said. Not after the stuff about my family. No chance." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't said for attention. It was just calm, final, and matter-of-fact. That's what makes this different from all the other times before. There's no tease of maybe one day. There's no playful banter or hint that a massive paycheck might change his mind. For Noel, this isn't about music or money anymore. It's about trust. And that trust is completely gone. Even fans who used to hold out hope are starting to accept that the reunion won't happen. The older they both get, the clearer it becomes that this isn't a temporary fight between stubborn brothers. It's two people who have grown into completely different men, with too much pain between them to ever build a bridge again. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into music's biggest stories.